Yo, what is up? Welcome to the Free Will Photos live stream. Today, we are going to be taking a look at blending modes or options inside of ON1 Photo Raw. Now, if we're new here and you guys are just meeting me for the first time, welcome. My name is Chris, and I'm a content creator slash, I guess you can call me a little bit of an instructor. At least that's what I like to call myself or think of myself as. But the real goal here is I am a photographer that's just trying to help anyone who's looking for an opportunity to learn how to use ON1 Photo Raw in a creative and unique way. So hopefully this lesson today, if you will, really resonates and works out pretty well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the slide deck that I have planned out for today. So blend modes inside of ON1 Photo Raw. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at what these things actually, what these are. So first one here, what are blend modes? I mean, it's a very common question that I think everyone would need to ask. Actually, we're going to go to a very, very short break here. Okay, so I was getting a little bit of an alert saying that there was something wrong with the streaming quality. So I just wanted to check that because, you know, I don't want to get too far into the stream and not share the content that I was hoping to be able to share with you guys today. So hopefully everyone was able to hear the intro and all of the stream stuff is working out properly. Now, let's go ahead and get back into today's content. So if you see me looking off to the side of the screen here, it's because my second monitor that has the slides up is over there. So, and that's also where I can check the comments. So please feel free to drop any questions or comments, whatever it is that you think or that comes to your mind whenever we talk about these blend modes. Please drop those in the comment section and I will do my absolute best to help you out with that. With that being said, I am still learning a lot about blend modes. All right, full transparency, I'm still learning a lot. And today what I'm going to do is share the information that I've learned, and we're going to look at some practical examples of how to use some of these tools. And that's actually exactly what these are. They are tools for you to use. And just think of it as a carpenter or someone who works inside of, you know, a place to build. We'll say a carpenter. All right. Think I said that? Whatever. They have a lot of tools at their disposal in order to make whatever it is that they're setting out to make. I would imagine some of the tools are going to be the same every single time. And other times they may not need the tools that they use for the last job. And that's the same concept when it comes to creating photos. So what are blend modes? Well, blend modes affect the individual pixels of an image. The effects on the top layer are combined with the pixels of the bottom layer. So what does that even mean? Well, if you think of a layer stack, you'll have, actually, give me 1 second. This was completely not planned, but I'm eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because I needed some lunch, right? So essentially there's two pieces of bread here. There's the top piece of bread and the bottom piece of bread. All of our effects go onto, or I'm sorry, all of our effects kind of go in between, but say we put an effect on this top piece of bread. It's going to affect how our blend modes are going to take the effect from the top piece of bread and blend with individual pixels, right? This isn't, it is all over the image, but it's how the algorithm blends with each pixel on the bottom piece or on the bottom layer. Now, I'm going to get my lunch out of screen here just to save on a little bit, but hopefully that kind of helped break it down. Essentially, what you're going to do is put an effect on a layer at the top. And I'm going to go into this a little bit more in depth when we go into the examples, but you put the effect on the layer and then it'll blend into the pixels of the lower layer. Now, that's going to change its the visual effect. So I have a little bit of a formula here. Top layer, which is your effect layer, or the top piece of bread, plus a blend mode that has to be applied to the effect layer or the layer right above. And again, I'm going to explain this a little bit more in detail when we get into that portion. And then you also have to have a bottom layer because you need two layers. You need one layer with information, and then you need another layer with pixels, and then right in between there is the blend mode that will decide how to give you the visual result. Now, I want to give you guys a little bit of a note here. Any change to pixels from an effect, any change to pixels from an effect below the blending layer will affect your visual result. So what does that mean? If you put a blend mode on the topmost layer, but that's the fifth layer, everything below that is also going to affect your visual result. Again, this is going to make more sense when we get to the examples, but I just want to make sure that we all are on somewhat of the same sheet of music when it comes to putting together blend modes. All right, let's go on to our next slide. So where can I find blend modes in ON1? Now, if you've been using ON1 for a while, you already know where the blend modes are. But if you are new to the blend mode or blend modes in general, or to ON1, then there's three key places where you can access blend modes. The first one is on the effects module, and that's where we're primarily going to be using blend modes today. The second area is on the layers module, and that's going to be the second most useful place to add blend modes. The other one is inside of local adjustments. And actually I got that backwards. Local adjustments is the second most useful. Layers is useful if you are doing composite images. All right. I will set up a whole nother stream for composite images because that is a completely different conversation than that is a more detailed conversation than what we're going to have today. Because when you start talking about blend modes with multiple images and composites, it can really start to add up. But today we're going to look at the effects module and the the local adjustments module. All right. Now, over on the left side of the screen here, these are all of the blend modes that ON1 offers. And I've put off to the right of this image the categories that they kind of fall in. So this really does lay the foundation of what does a blend mode do to my image, right? So the top section there, that's the darken blend modes, and it's easy to identify because it says darken. Now, obviously above that line is the normal blend mode. This is the default blend mode whenever you apply an effect or a local adjustment. It's almost a mute point or a null point. It is not going to use any algorithm to blend. It's just going to affect the pixels on top, and there's no special consideration to the pixels below it. All right. Now, the next portion is darken modes, and right below that is lighten. right below that is contrast, and this starts with the overlay, the soft light one. And then we go into some of the special modes. Now, I put special modes for both of these, and you'll see why. Difference and exclusion, I am still trying to figure out a use for it, other than like making some cool odd effect, right? I don't know if cool and odd can go together, but today we're going to put those two together. Cool and odd effect. And then there's the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. Those are also special blend modes, and they specifically affect the pixels based off of hue, saturation, color, or the luminance value. Now, we're only going to be looking at one of those special blend modes today. All right, let's go on to our next slide. So before we get into the blend modes that we're going to look at, and this is something I kind of cover in my photo editing, I kind of cover this in my photo editing video, or basic photo editing video. And it's, what is your vision? What do you want to do with the image that you are about to edit? If you don't have a vision, it's going to be almost not impossible, because you can experiment, and I fully encourage people to experiment, but you should have some kind of an idea of what you would want to get out of a final result when you edit this particular image, or do whatever it is that you're going to do with the image. All right, so you have to ask yourself the question, what is my vision for this photo? Because blend modes are really just, and the what is your vision is far greater than just the blend modes. Where that should be something you ask every time you open up a photo. What do I want to do to this photo? How do I want to manipulate it? How do I want to enhance it? Do I even want to manipulate or enhance this photo? What is your vision can be creative, and it can also be practical. Am I going to just crop this and put it on, Instagram? Whatever it's going to be, all right? Very important for you to know what your vision is. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how to apply the blend modes. Now, this is just my method of applying blend modes. This is not the most perfect method, just the way that I like to use them, because it gives me the most control. In my own creative workflow, I like to mess around with the contrast and the luminance values. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, I had to clear my throat and didn't want to make that loud noise in front of everyone. With that being said, I like to use the curves adjustment layer in order to add my blend modes. The reason for that is I get a lot of control over the luminance values. I get a lot of control over where specifically I'm going to impact my photo. Also, in the colors, I get in the RGB channel, not necessarily every single color, but you know how that can, if you manipulate the channels, you can get a lot of really cool effects. This is my personal preference for using blend modes. Now, you can use them on any and every effect that's inside of ON1, but when I go to apply blend modes, at least in the effects module, I typically apply my blend modes to the curves adjustment layer and modify whatever I need to there. Now, there are a ton of different ways that you can use the blend modes inside of the effects module. But typically I use it inside of the curves, and we'll talk about that when we get into the examples. The next area that I use them in, as I mentioned earlier, is the local adjustments. Now, I'm a huge fan of using them inside of the local adjustments module, just because local adjustments are already very specific to an area, but when you can mix in a blend mode, it gives you that much more control over the way things are being merged or manipulated inside of your photo. So just food for thought. But shout out in the comment section if you guys have ever used blend modes to do anything with your photography. And mind you, blend modes are not exclusive to ON1 Photo Raw. In fact, blend modes, I don't know exactly where they started, so I will just say that I know that they're in Photoshop and Affinity Photo. Obviously, Photoshop is probably the OG photo editing application on the block. And if blend mode started there, then that would make sense. But nonetheless, blend modes and the way that they interact with the layers below usually work the same in all software. It's just a little bit more on how the developers wrote that algorithm to interact. So just keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to move on to the next slide here. And this brings us to our examples. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to ON1. And here I have 5 images that I've curated out of my live stream photos. And we're going to take a look. I'm trying to close out. All right, I'll just move this over. Sorry. My live streaming software gives me like this little box that I'm not a huge fan of, but whatever. Now, here we are back inside of ON1, and I have the 5 photos that I plan to edit. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the examples. Please drop any questions in the comment section. I'd love to help answer. All right. So this one, we're going to take a look at the luminosity value. All right. We're going to take a look at the luminosity. And, you know, actually, let me check something on my, never mind. We're just going to go with it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the luminosity value. Now, as I mentioned before, I go straight to the effects module. You can do all of your development inside of a photo, no problem, before you even go and start adding in your blending modes. But today, I'm going to start here. We'll minimize that. I'm going to start with the luminosity option. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I've already made some edits to this photo, and that was specifically to streamline this process of the teaching. I will show you how I use them creatively as well as I go through the conversation. Now, when I turn on the luminosity blend mode, watch what happens in specifically the reds. All right. Watch what happens over here in the reds. All right. And I'm going to zoom in so that way you can see it. They get brighter. Now, the color itself didn't necessarily change, but the midtone, because of how I drug this particular curve up, as you can see, it's only affecting the luminance values inside of the image. Now, how did I turn this on? Well, you click on the little gear icon next to the name, and then underneath blending options, you have your blend mode. You hit the drop down and you just select the one that you want to use. Now, I am applying this to the entire image, but you do have the choice if you wanted to only apply it to the highlights. Luminosity blend modes are really good for breaking down into your highlights, midtones, and shadows. Obviously, this particular edit is not the most flattering to the image, but nonetheless, this is a really good way to really hone in where your images or where your creativity goes inside of the image, and then using the blend mode to really address that. All right. Now, let me show you the difference between using a luminosity blend mode and using just a regular normal blend mode. Or I'm sorry, no blend mode. There's no blend mode applied to this image. I hit the little gear icon. It says normal. So that lets you know that there's no blend mode added to this particular image. And as you can see in the red channel, you crank that thing up and the whole image gets some red in there. Now, obviously, This is really just an example of showing you. I wouldn't say that this is a good edit or bad edit, but this is just an example of showing you how to use the luminosity blend mode and what it actually does. All right. That's the comparison that I wanted to make on this particular photo. Now, again, if you have questions about the luminosity blend mode, drop it in the comment section. I'd love to answer any of the questions that you may have. So we're going to go ahead and hit done with that. And we will move on to our next example. Once this decides to save. There we go. All right. By the way, I am on the new M1 Mac Mini. I finally got that in, and that's what I'm streaming to you guys from right now. So hopefully it doesn't give me as many issues as my last computer, even though that still is working pretty well. So the next one is the luminosity blend mode, and this is a different example. So let's go ahead and open this one up. All right. Once it renders the preview for us, there we go. Go into effects. Now this time I am going to show you a curves with a lighten overall, right? Now this is a dark photo. I just pulled up on the midtones here inside of the tone curve, or I guess the tonal values. I'm not in a specific color channel, so it's just pulling it up for all of them evenly, right? And then I also have the opacity down to 57, just because I didn't want it to be overpowering. Now, let's go ahead and turn on this particular curve. And this one has the luminosity blend mode on it, as you can see. So when I turn this on, it does nothing. All right. Now, the reason why this one doesn't do much of anything is, one, because I mean, it's very subtle of what it does. I shouldn't say it does nothing. The reason why it's not doing much of anything is because the luminance values in this photo are so dark that there isn't much that it can do. However, when I turn on this particular luminance value up here at the top, where I just cranked it up, it brightens up the entire image, and then I can enhance it a little bit more with this particular tone adjustment. Now, again, this was an underexposed image. It was grossly underexposed, and you can correct a lot of exposure issues inside of the develop module. I can just hit AI auto, and that helped out a little bit. Now maybe this tone curve will look a little bit better. But now I introduced a ton of noise, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use the AI auto and then come over here. I like to use blend modes because they help reduce on the noise saturation. Not that, noise is terrible, just not my preference. Now, again, this photo was shot underexposed, but using a lighten blend mode, right? I used a screen blend mode here, which was inside of that lighten category. I was able to bring back some of the tonal range inside of the image and not have the noise show up as much. All right. So let's go ahead and close this one out. Yo, what is up? You use blend modes, but without any other filter. Okay. And welcome from the Netherlands. Nice. Welcome. Yeah, so I will hopefully walk through some really good use cases. I just want to get through the examples, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of a demonstration that talks about where the vision comes from, right? Because in all of these examples so far, I have not talked about the vision. I forgot to look at the notes on this one. So, photo with screen blend mode and local adjustments. All right. So this photo has another one of the lighten blend modes. All right. And as you can see, this is an underexposed image. I'm going to go over to the effects module, and I always start from the bottom and then I move up as I start to really, edit the photo. But the very first one is throwing on the screen blend mode. I didn't even, I'm going to show you how this one works. All right. The cool thing about screen blend modes on a dark photo, this is normal. I haven't done any adjustments to any of the channels here on the curves module or on the curves layer. And then when I come down here and I hit screen, you can see it instantly lightens up the photo. And yes, there's noise in here because if you underexpose an image, and this was a bracketed shot, I just chose the darkest exposure on the bracket for this example. But when you underexpose an image, you also capture a lot of digital noise in the shadows, because that's typically where noise lives, right? Because that's where the sensor is working the hardest to preserve as much detail as possible. And I won't get into the science of that. But now we're going to go into the noise reduction, because I didn't want noise in this particular image. And I'm going to pause here on this image because the rest, because I didn't put any, on this particular image, I didn't put any blending option for the noise reduction because I want that to affect all the pixels uniformly. Yeah, I'm going to say uniformly is a word today. All right. I don't know if it is or isn't, but we're going to call it one. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit done on this image because I actually did a lot on that image to turn it into something a little bit more creative. I'll show that to you here in a second. Now, we're going to go ahead and click on this one. So this one is going to show the soft light and the overlay demo. And then I also have some local adjustments on here that really enhance the photo. So let me go ahead and open up edit, and hopefully my computer is cooperating. I don't know what is going on. I see some strange feedback on my preview monitor, but it's okay. It's okay. We're going to keep going. So I converted this image into a black and white image. All right. And that's what you're seeing right now with some dynamic contrast on the person. I masked him in or out, whatever. I only masked the dynamic contrast onto him using the AI, the quick AI tool. The AI masking tool. Man, can't talk today. But what I really wanted to show in this particular image is using overlay, which is a contrast-based edit over the entire image. And I really threw some cyan into the shot because the original, let me turn off the black and white adjustment. The original had all this orange in there, and I really just wanted to make that pop in the black and white. So how do you do that? You go to the blue channel, you pull down on that particular area. Could I have done it over here in the yellows on the black and white adjustment? Potentially. But again, I like using the curves layer or a curves module, if you will, because I feel like I have more freedom to manipulate the colors, the luminosity, the contrast by different luminance zones, if you will. If I want more cyan in the shadow and I want more magenta in the highlight, I can do that so much easier inside the curves than if I try to use multiple modules. So that's the reason why I use the curves module for a majority of what I'm doing here. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and turn on the overlay. As you can see, overlay is an aggressive contrast boost to the entire image. So much so that I had to bring down the opacity, right? I'll bring it up full and it just turned the image really, really dark. And you know, you can play around with it, but I found that 57 was where I wanted it to be, so I'll put it back at 57. Now I'm going to show you the difference between overlay and soft light. Now, soft light, it brightens up the image in a very natural kind of way. All right, it's adding contrast. It's allowing the contrast to really expand across the tonal range, but at the same time, it is allowing the image to breathe, and it gives a really nice natural effect. You can even see that there's some detail retained in his hat here, which you don't get that with overlay, right? Overlay, you just lose all of the detail that's in the hat. It's gone. However, when I throw on soft light, I get all of that detail. You can even see that there's the little circle, embroidered circles in the top of the hat, things of that sort, right? Now, to each their own on how they plan to do this. So that is overlay and soft light. All right. Now, one of the slides that I'm realizing was missing from the lesson, and actually, while that saves, I'm going to see if I could go back, because I feel like I'm missing a slide. And the slide that I'm missing has all of the information about each of the blend modes. So I apologize that I don't have that slide available for today's lesson. I thought I prepared well enough and I missed that. You know what? Because this slide is so important, if you give me a second, I'm going to pull that slide up because it's going to be like extremely hard to continue on. So let me go ahead and put us on just a short break. I'll be right back. And I do apologize that I was not prepared, but it's so important that you guys get this information. So I'll be right back. All right, so I got the slide here, and I took myself off the screen for a second, but that's fine. What's important? Wow, sorry. Rough day. And I do see your question in the comment section, and I will answer that in 1 second. So the top 5 blend modes is what I was actually going to be going over. I don't know how this slide missed the slide deck, so here it is. Multiply, darkens pixels. All right, we've already seen that in the previous slide where I was breaking down those sections, and we're going to actually take a look at that here in a second. And then we also have screen, soft light, and overlay, and luminosity, which are all the blend modes that we went over. But let me go ahead and read what screen does, or kind of where you would get the idea of using it. It's great for making an image brighter overall if it was underexposed. It can be used to add interesting highlight details selectively. The other thing that we already seen was overlay. All right, and this was the last comparison: overlay and soft light. Overlay is an aggressive way of contrasting the top layer with the bottom layer. This should be used globally to boost impact of an overall image. So if you want something that goes from a really harsh transition of light to dark, then overlay is really good for providing that type of contrast. It makes your photos a little bit more edgy, makes them pop. Now, soft light, on the other hand, it's more of a gentle contrast to your image. All right. And it does the same thing as overlay, just less aggressive. Can also be used to open shadow detail in a very natural way between the two layers. And that's what we were seeing with the gentleman's hat in the last example. Now, here we have the luminosity blend mode, and the luminosity blend mode, it blends the effect based on the brightness value of each pixel on the bottom layer, and it protects the color distortion. And that's what we seen with the first image. So I'm sorry that I didn't have this slide up, but now we're about to go into the multiply blend mode example, and then I'm going to answer the question in reference to the workflow and when to add this. So the multiply blend mode, it is great for making an image darker overall if it was underexposed. You could also use this blend mode selectively to add deep contrast. So using it as a local adjustment, you can add deep contrast, or you can just use it globally, which is the way that I use most of the blend modes. All right. So let's go ahead and jump back over into ON1 now that we got that kind of figured out. And again, I truly apologize that I didn't have that slide in there, but we're going to keep on moving. So the question is, and let me go ahead and just pop it up real quick. What is the work sequence? What do I use first? A curves filter, and then the filter you want to use it with. So that's actually a good question. And without being too elusive or evasive, I don't know. I start off with what is my vision, and I typically always start with the curves layer. So I'm going to try and get my base tone of my image using the curves layer and applying the blend mode that I believe is going to help achieve that effect. Now, that doesn't mean I don't always use that particular method, but I do use it most of the time. And that's kind of what we were seeing in these images. I'm going to open this one up and I'll see what I have here. But okay, so I have a lot of effects inside of this particular image. However, as you can see down here at the bottom, I always have the curves layer. And this is just a part of my workflow, my style, the way that I see vision in editing photos. I always start with the curves layer. So that way I can get like, it's kind of like, I don't want to say cleaning the table, right? But it's like priming the grill. Before you start cooking, you have to, get everything going. You got to heat it up, and then you start to throw everything on top of it so you can cook. I don't know if that's a good illustration. Hopefully that helped explain a little bit. But yes, I do start with the curves layer first. And that's mostly because this is one adjustment that does absolutely nothing to your photo when you apply it. And then you actually have to do something to make it happen. Now, this time, as you can see, the photo's a little overexposed. Now, I personally enjoy the overexposed look to this photo, and I wouldn't do much to this photo. This is another photo that my wife took many years ago. This was back in 2014. And if you caught my how to recover an overexposed image or recover an image in ON1, there was another photo from the exact same location, just different pose. And that's where this came from. But essentially, it's a little overexposed, or someone may consider it to be overexposed. So the way that I would edit this, instead of coming over to the develop module and pulling down on the highlights, right, which is absolutely a way of doing it. All right. And in fact, I showed that you can recover an image by just using the develop module. But that's not what we're going to do here today, because this is about blend modes. And I even think that blend modes are probably one of the better ways of doing this. So here I have the multiply blend mode applied, and I'm applying it to absolutely everything. It adds a lot of dark, detailed information back into the image. Now, obviously, you can just pull down the opacity to get, the look that you're going for, which was really just for me to darken the image. And I think that this is where I would keep it. Oh man, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll make sure to let them know that they're getting mad love on the internet. I appreciate that. Thanks. But here, that's how I would get my base going, right? Then I start to add in all of the extra information. So then I would just click here and hit the tone enhancer, which actually is brighter now because I made the tone enhancer applicable to the curves being at 100%. But, as you can see, I build upward, right? And as I was saying before, that any effect that any blend mode that you apply to an effect above it in the stack affects the visual outcome of everything. All right. Case in point, if I were to move this multiply over the tone enhancer, I'm going to get a different look now than I was when it was below it. All right. As you can see, it darkens this whole area up when I have the multiply with the curves adjustment underneath it. All right. And sorry that my screen keeps jumping around. And okay, it sounds like I was able to explain that pretty decent. So I appreciate the feedback on that. Now, with that being said, I added in a few more items here. All right. And this is essentially where, some people, you could literally just stop right here. There's no reason to go beyond this, but I had a vision with this. I like the bright, sunny look. It's a very warm photo. I happen to really enjoy this series of photos that I have here. So I'm going to show you what I did with a little bit of the color. Now, I felt that because it was already a little bit of a washed out image, there was a little bit of haze, the orange didn't pop the way that I would like it to. And that's just a personal preference. I like vibrant colors. So what I did is I just added in a color enhancer, and then I threw up the vibrance and the saturation a little bit. I didn't touch any of the channels. or the color ranges or whatever. Only thing I did was throw in a saturation and a vibrance adjustment here. And then I said, okay, well, I want to top it off with a little bit of sun. So I threw in the sunshine filter, and this is what I got. Now, this is a little overly contrasty for my personal take or whatever. I like, again, the original image. Now, what you can do is you can come over and throw in a little bit of haze. Maybe that's a little too much. Maybe just back it down. And do something like that. And I think that that gives this a very natural feel to the image for me. And you can also do that as a local adjustment, which is even better. And one of the things that I forgot to mention on this photo, my face was really underexposed. So I had to throw in a little bit of exposure adjustment, and then I threw in some structure to give my face a little bit more contrast and things of that sort. But that's a local adjustment. There's no blend mode applied to this. It was just something that I needed to do in order to balance my face with their face exposure wise. All right. So we'll go ahead and hit done on that. And I'm going to take you back to another image. And this image, I took some time to make a little bit of an edit on. And I think it's this one. Yes. So this image, we've already added in the curves and some noise adjustment. And I told you that we were going to come back to this one because I also made some different, some more creative edits to the image. And, this is a little less about blend modes right now and is going to go more into really delivering on the vision. Now, I wanted to showcase the need for adding in a screen blend mode. This is an extreme case. I would not recommend underexposing your image as far as I did in this particular image, but that is what I did underexpose it. So take that for what it's worth. However, I wanted to add in some contrast into these darker areas. And then I said, you know what? What is the focus of the image? And as we were driving down as we were driving down this road in Alaska, we were coming over this hill and I seen this mountain and these trees on the side. And I said, okay, I got to snap this photo. My wife slowed down a little bit and I went ahead and took this particular image. And these series of images come with a story, and I'll talk about that a little bit later because I do have an announcement later on in the stream here. But where I was like, okay, I need to really localize the adjustment here, so I started with some enhancements. And the very first one was a dodging enhancement because it was too dark, right? So I went ahead and brightened up everything. Brightened up as much as I can. And I don't think I did use a blend mode on this. So I used the screen blend mode on this because I wanted to bring a little bit more brightness into the localized areas. And I don't think I painted too much. I had a pretty low opacity. Yeah, I had a pretty low opacity and I was just brushing pretty loosely, to be honest, where I wanted to add in a little bit of emphasis, which was on the snow that's coming down on these trees. And then this hard line that is going down the road to kind of start giving the vision, or not the vision, but directing viewers' attention right into this mountain. And that's kind of where I went with it, right? I even adjusted the levels to really play this out, and I brought the feather up really, really high because I wanted it to be as natural as possible And then I brought the opacity down so some of the original was showing through. But for me, where I think this image really started to come together and really started to pop was with this light beam. And it's subtle, but it's also very necessary. Now, this one does not have a blending mode applied to it. And I kind of wanted to make up a light source. And this is something that I used to do back in my Photoshop days when I was using Photoshop excessively. And I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I can try to do something like that. And if you're curious as to how to add in a light beam, I literally just came in here and I chose to paint with a color. I used the picker and I chose one of the brighter colors, which it looked like it was more of a white that was on the mountain when I zoomed in, and I'd used the color picker, but it came out with this blue tone, which works very well because this is a very blue image overall. And so this is a gradient, hand painted gradient, I should say. I'll show you the mask on this one. And I just used my my mouse and I came in at an angle. I messed around with the opacity and the flow, and I just built this up over time. And again, very, very similar to what I would do inside of Photoshop. All right. So that was the final result of this particular image. Now, I did get a little bit more creative with this black and white image. And I'll show you that here shortly, or real quick. And I did use a blending mode for this creative, I guess, concept. Now, soft light. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate you, liking the edit. I just like to mess around, and hopefully, you guys are also doing the same thing, just experimenting. But with this particular photo, and by the way, this photo, along with the dude that was in the trees that I showed the luminosity blend mode on, these are both from Upsplash, which is a free, royalty-free website for photos. So that's where these came from. I did not photograph these. However, I did throw in what you're already seeing it in the final image, which is this really, really bright light. And the vision that I got with this as I was editing the photo is the light that was shining on his face. I said, okay, he's obviously looking into a light source, and I didn't like the colors in the photo, but I enjoyed the tones in the photo, which is why I went with the black and white overall, because I wanted to see what tones I could get out of the photo. And then as soon as it went black and white, I seen this rim light that, I mean, you just can't miss that. Now, obviously, I'm using the overlay blend mode on the curves adjustment, but what I went ahead and I did was I took a gradient, and I'll show this here. I took a gradient and I made it pretty large. It covers most of the photo. And I wanted the light to kind of fall off as it goes into the shadow here. I was taking some time to, really say, okay, I want to make sure that the light falls off in a realistic way. But at the same time, I increased the blues. If you don't remember that from the curves adjustment, I increased the blues. So what I did was, since it's black and white, there's no color anyway. I used a blue filter, or a blue gradient, I should say, starting from here and turn that into my light source. Now, I could have used any color, but blue is the color that I increased a ton inside of the curves filter inside the midtones here, right? So if I were to turn off this black and white, it doesn't look very good. It doesn't even look like it makes sense overall. But when I turned the filter back on, then I was able to really enhance the way that this blue comes through on the photo overall. And it just looks like it was the light source that was impacting him. And, you know, it's not overly directional. It's just, I guess it's an inferred direction. Okay. Yeah, blend modes will change the way you work. And you can use blend modes inside of black and white. In fact, I even think blend modes work a little bit more, especially when you start talking about contrast, right? I think that the blend modes inside of, for a black and white, inside of the overlay, the soft light, those two are really going to be huge winners. Luminosity can work extremely well also. So yeah, blend modes are going to enhance your editing overall. But I would also mention, don't worry about using them too much. Use them, like I said at the beginning, as you are the artist, right? You get to choose how you want to manipulate your canvas. The tools that you bring to your paint session or whatever, those, you know, obviously they're all inside of ON1, but you get to choose which ones you want to incorporate into your method, or I'm sorry, your artwork. Hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, you know, please let me know in the comment section. But I think that makes a little bit of sense. Now, I personally enjoy this with the soft light because it wasn't an overly contrasted image. So there you have it. That's, you know, very specific to blend modes. And, you know, I'm not going to do a whole lot, but I do want to move into a brief announcement. You know, I want to share some news with you guys. So let me go back to my slides. And so there's a few things to remember, and I guess, yeah, we're just going to go with that. Maybe something happened with my slides. I thought I had a different slide in here, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and go with the things to remember. First, you always want to start with your vision in mind. If you don't know where you're trying to go with the photo, that's perfectly fine, but you should have a general idea. In fact, with that particular photo that I turned black and white, I didn't know that I was going to go black and white with it until I tried manipulating some of the colors with the tone curve. And I realized that I didn't care for the colors in the photo personally. It's not to say that the photographer did a bad job with the initial edit, because again, I got this from Upsplash or Unsplash, whatever it is. And I'm confident that there were edits on the photo already. However, I wasn't digging them, right? So I decided that I wanted to make it more contrasty and focus on the tones in the image, which that's what I did. That was my vision. I did not go in thinking, yeah, I'm going to turn this into a black and white image and then manipulate the tones from there. All right. The second thing is effects, local adjustments give you the most flexibility for blending options. I think you guys were able to catch on to the fact that effects and local adjustments, that's where you want to spend most of your time when it comes to applying blend modes to your images. the more you apply effects, or I'm sorry, blend modes to effects and local adjustments, you're going to have so much flexibility in the way that you manipulate your overall visual outcome. I don't know if there's much that needs to be said about that. Now, blend modes, they also look at individual pixels as effects. Are stacked blend modes look at individual pixels, and as effects, our stacked pixels are changed, which can change your overall. Wow. Maybe this was like the first version of my slides. Hey, look, I'm a real dude, right? I have real struggles, and today I am apparently struggling with technology. So, what I was really trying to, what I was trying to say with this is, your blend modes are algorithmically applied to the pixels of the layer beneath it. All right. It's important that you understand that, because when you affect the layer below it, you're also affecting all of the other layers. But as you start to stack up, you may go with a normal blend mode, which does no specific or specialized blending overall. So that's something that I would recommend. Just be aware of the fact that when you apply a blend mode, you're not applying it to every single pixel on that image. You're applying it almost selectively or locally based off of how that algorithm interacts with the pixels of the image or of the layer below it. So hopefully, that made sense, and it looks like it did. So thank you. I really appreciate that, because I promise you, I rehearse these slides, and for some reason, here it is. And, things never work the way that you expect them to work when you go to use them sometimes. But that is life, right? That is life. And I'm glad that I'm able to share this with you guys, because sometimes I think we as content creators on YouTube, and this is not me digging on any creator on YouTube, but sometimes we show you so much perfection, and I don't ever believe that I fall into the group of showing too much perfection, because I'm not perfect, and I want to make sure that when you run into a hiccup or a challenge, part of being a photographer and even in photo editing is overcoming setbacks and challenges. So, and then developing the best product you possibly can with what you got to work with. And that's essentially what I'm going to do for the remainder of this stream, barring any other self-inflicted wounds. That's what I'll call them, self-inflicted wounds. Let me read the comments here. That's true. They're very important in black and white, but you're showing away. Okay. That's awesome. Hey, I'm always happy to help show something that you may not have thought of, or something that you haven't seen before. And then nicely done with probable. Thank you. I really appreciate that, Perry. Perry Picks. And then you know what I mean. So I appreciate all that feedback. Now, there was supposed to be another slide here, and I don't know what happened with my slides. I really don't. I feel like I need to go back and do some homework. But you're right. Perfection does not exist. So here's the deal. I'll leave it on the question slide, because I want you guys to drop in any questions that you may have about ON1 Photo Raw or anything of the sort. With that, let me get a drink of water. I've been talking a lot. All right. So starting, I guess today, but every Saturday I'm going to be live streaming. That's the announcement that I wanted to share. And there are segments that will be inside of each one of these live streams. They'll kind of be themed. One of them is going to be artist features or photographer features, where you, as a photographer, subscribe to the channel, or not. If you're just interested in coming on, sharing some of your work, I will be more than happy. I would be delighted to interview you for a segment of the live stream, because what I think happens in the world of photography is we get wrapped up in the photographers that are really, really big. I am not a big photographer, and I don't think I ever want to be, because I want to share my work in a meaningful way. And I think that many of the subscribers that come to this channel, they feel the exact same way, where you guys want to share your work in a meaningful way. And that's what I want to be able to provide, a showcase to a group of like-minded individuals that want to share their work in a meaningful way. So that is what I plan to do. That's one segment. Another segment is going to be, I am going to start using ON1 Mobile. I have my iPhone. I'm going to be using that a lot more, just using ON1 Mobile to capture images and then editing them on the iPad. So that will be its own independent live stream once a month, where I go over ON1 Mobile, because I don't believe that it is where Lightroom is just yet. I think that there's a lot of tools that are needing some work and functionality inside of ON1 Mobile, to include stability, because I still get it to crash on me when I'm using the local adjustments. So, just trying to highlight that you can create wherever you are. And then the other thing that I forgot to mention with the artist feature is really specifically the story behind your images. If you bear with me for a second, the image right here, I'll share a very brief story, because, I believe that every image has a story behind it. This image was taken, it says 2018, but it was not taken in 2018. I don't know why it says that, because I didn't even have my EOS R in 2018. But nonetheless, it was actually taken in 2019. And in 2019, or I'm sorry, in 2020, wow, getting my years all messed up. See, the year on the photo kind of threw me off. In 2020, it was taken in January, actually. And when I took the photo, I was actually suffering from illness called shingles, which is why my wife was driving. But I was so stubborn and I wanted to take photos that I was like, no, I want to go on this trip that we had already planned. And I wanted to get these photos. I had no idea that I was suffering from shingles. I just knew I didn't feel well. That was it. All right. This was obviously before the pandemic. I didn't have any of those type of symptoms. I had other issues with, just an aching body. And I said, nope, I'm going to be all right. I'll get over it. Took some Tylenol. So I was asleep and awake. But this photo, I remember like I was waking up, a little groggy, whatever. And I seen this image in front of me. And I said, I got to take a picture of that. And, that's what photography is like. Yeah, shingles is awful. It's awful. And, had I not shared that with you just now, you would have never known the struggle of this image, which I have an entire collection of images from this trip that I now call my shingles photos, not because, I'm not like the most clever or creative titler, if you will, but these were photos that I took while I was, trying to overcome something. I had no idea what it was, until later on when I went to the doctor and they're like, yeah, you had shingles. I was like, great. It only lasts for me for about 3-4 days, somewhere in there. But it was an awful time. But I got some great pictures, or at least I believe. And that was the memories. Yeah. And that is actually one of the reasons why I picked up the camera. My personal story behind picking up a camera was specifically to capture moments and be able to capture memories. And I remember this series of photos just as much as I remember the photos that I shared with my girls at the Queen Mary. It was a family vacation. And I have photos of all of my family members on that vacation. My wife, kids, mom, dad, sisters, cousins. It was just a really good vacation. But the whole phrase, a photo is worth 1,000 words. That's why I want to bring on artists or other photographers to share what it is that, they were able to capture, or what drove them to capture that image. And I think that that's beneficial for everyone who is working on learning how to get that creative vision, because we all have a different creative vision, right? I think that is very value added to the community. Let's see. Robert says, just a thought, consider sharing a photo such as this one and allow us to creatively apply some of what we learned during the stream and share results with you. Okay. So, yeah, and that's a great idea, Robert. So here's what I can do. I will make sure once this live stream gets posted to YouTube as like a video or an enduring video, what I'm going to do is upload the photo to a downloadable gallery from my website. That way you can go and get the photo downloaded completely free. You don't, no payments or anything like that. You get it for free. And then I have to figure out an uploading method. I hear Flickr works, so I'm gonna figure that out. And by next week, I should have that figured out, and I'll be able to share with you how you can send those back, because I think that would be a great segment. And I would really appreciate and be excited to see where you guys go with the photos and how you edit them and make those photos possible. And then worst case scenario, I just link you or send you the link to the photos on Unsplash. And then you can go and download them for yourself from there, and, get to see some other creatives' works. And there was one more thing to the segments. So I went over the photo editing walkthrough. Or no, I didn't go over photo editing walkthrough. Wow. Okay. So this segment that I'm going over with you right now, or what we went over in the beginning of the live stream, where I was showing you how to use the blend options inside of ON1. That's the walkthrough. So I take you through simple and dramatic edits. And then there's also going to be live streams where I focus mainly on compositing images inside of ON1, but also going into third-party applications. I think that ON1 is a fantastic piece of software. I love using ON1, but at the same time, I'm also a huge fan of third-party applications. I use the Nick collection. If you're familiar with that, shout it out in the comment section. I really love using the color effects and silver effects. I used to use that almost exclusively when I was a Lightroom user for my black and whites. I used to use that like literally every time I went black and white. Silver effects was my go-to. And you don't have to have these programs in order to understand the use out of going from ON1 Photo Raw to a third-party program and then back. And another software that I got recently, which is, don't forget black and white. I'm not going to forget that. So that is a whole nother, yes, that can be its very own live stream segment through the months. So yeah, great idea. Thank you, Crystal. So for those of you who don't know, Crystal is my wife. She is a awesome supporter and fan, and I love her very much, and I appreciate her support in me sitting here and, you know, creating content for you guys. So show Crystal some love, shout her out in the comment section. Greatly appreciate that. But yes, black and white images will absolutely be a segment for the live stream. But then we're also going to go into photo editing critiques for anyone who wants to share their work and, you know, hear what I think about it. Now, I'm not a negative person, and I hope you guys have all learned that about me. I'm not going to tell you that your work is awful. What I do is look at it from a technical perspective and offer different ways of thinking about capturing the same thing, from composition to lighting to angle, things like that. But your vision is your vision, and I will not have your vision, and you won't have my vision. So, you know, don't think of when I put photo critique that I'm just going to be like ripping people's work left and right. That's not my style. And then obviously submission edits, that is you guys submitting photos to me and that you would like me to edit, and then vice versa. I submit photos to you that I would like you to edit, and you edit those, bring them back, and then that can be a part of the photo critique, because I could give every single person on the stream right now a copy of any image, and then you guys will all send it back in different ways. And that's all because you have different vision. And that goes back to the beginning of the stream. And then the last one is questions and answers for ON1 Photo. Now, I am no guru when it comes to ON1 Photo Raw. But I have been editing, I've been using photo editing applications for a very long time. I can't remember exactly how long. I got into photography in, I want to say 2012, or digital photography, I should say, in 2012. But before that, I was still using Photoshop. In fact, I was using Photoshop in 2007 when they had the creative suites. So I am very familiar with editing photos and pixels and digital manipulation. With that being said, ON1 Photo Raw, there are a lot of capabilities that you can do inside of it that you would never have to go into a photo editing application like Photoshop or Affinity Photo. But as I mentioned earlier, those third-party applications, there are some limitations to ON1 Photo Raw where you will have to go into a third-party application. And those are, you know, the things that I want to be able to show. Because between ON1 Photo and Affinity Photo, you can do a lot of things. So I would really enjoy being able to answer your questions. In fact, the crux of today's episode is specifically from a question that I got on the last live stream, which was unfortunately 2 months ago. Last month, I just couldn't get my act together to put the live stream out. But if you are all willing to accept, you know, my honest feedback, then I would greatly appreciate showing up on a regular basis. And let me go ahead and post this one. So, and I believe your name is pronounced Shalom. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to mispronounce your name. But I am young. You are absolutely correct. I am young. And you started taking photos in 1976. Wow, that is awesome. I wasn't even born in 1976. So I will, my hat is off to you, and mad respect for, I'm humbled that you're here listening to this young whippersnapper, all over, YouTube, and hopefully, you probably can teach me some things. I know it, not probably. You can teach me some things, and I would be honored to just hear your insight and the way that you approach photography as a whole. And Tony, okay, all right. I'll remember that. I will remember that. I'm gonna actually write that down because if I don't, I'll forget it. Yeah, nah, hey, you guys are awesome. I really do appreciate the support for everyone, who hangs out. I really do. It's a lot of fun to be able to hop on and bring you guys content each and every week. And, this is a community that I'm looking to continue building. And yeah, my first camera was a Nikon EM back in 1982. Wow. Wow. Okay. So, full disclosure, I was born in 88. I got my first camera. It was a disposable camera, like a Kodak disposable camera. So, I shot on a film camera once. I want to say it was a Panasonic of some sort. But it was like a little cutesy camera. It wasn't anything professional. It was like a tourist camera, if you will, that you can just load your own film into. It was my sister's camera, actually. And I couldn't take a picture that my finger would be over the lens. So yeah, mad respect to everyone who has been in the photography game as long as you guys have. I appreciate that feedback, Perry. Yeah, like I said in many of my videos, I've spent a lot of time on YouTube, and then I spent a lot of time testing the stuff that I've learned on YouTube, and I just want to be able to share it with the community, because I think that the way that we continue to grow is to share. So I really appreciate that. And Robert still has his Nikon EM. And no, that's awesome. I do not have my first camera. In fact, I sold my Nikon D5200, which was, I guess, my second digital camera. I don't know if I shared this story with you guys or not, so sorry if I'm repeating something, but I had sold that to Adorama last year so I could trade it up or at least get some money towards my Canon R6, which I absolutely love. And yeah, I pick up that camera to photograph light switches. It's like I just want to use it to take a picture. It really does inspire me to photograph. And then looks like Antoni had a Olympus OM10. Okay. I'm not familiar with the Olympus. Give me 1 second. Mr. Waffles is getting a little excited right now. No, no. and I apologize. Look, I'm, again, real dude, real life, and my dog is just walking all over in my office, and yeah. All right, now he's right here next to me. So, but yeah, no, great discussion, and I really do appreciate just being able to come and hang out with you all. I really do. Now, with that being said, I am planning to keep the streams for now at noon, and I am going to make the streams probably a little uh, like only one or two of the segments that I mentioned earlier will actually be shared. And since what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. And of course, my green screen. There we go. We'll go back to the beach. Let's go back to the beach. There we go. Thank you. I really appreciate that because sometimes I feel like I'm an amateur, right? But I'm also okay with being an amateur. Uh, but here's the slides that was supposed to be in here that talks about the live stream segments, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys were able to see that because I don't know how I missed it. I don't know how it didn't get into the actual presentation that I loaded into Ecamm. But nonetheless, every week, one of these things, which this will always be the enduring thing that I do, but it'll be along one of these lines, right? A third-party application coming from ON1, going into a third-party application, editing that photo, bringing it back into ON1, and maybe even editing it further because sometimes you have to do that. And then simple dramatic edits, things like that. And then one of these, and I guess Q&A will always be there as well because as long as, I am posting content to YouTube, you will always be able to ask any question that you have, and I will be more than happy to answer it. All right. But then the photography interviews, obviously, maybe won't have that many photographers available. So that's obviously open to interpretation. And then the photo critique and the submission edits. I think that submission edits will probably happen more frequently just because I think that we do have a very active community where, you guys will send in stuff and then we'll be able to talk it over. But at the bare minimum, we will always have some sort of photo editing walkthrough, sort of like a classroom style. And I will make sure that I rehearse a lot more, or at least have enough notes that we won't have to go back and forth with technology and slides. And the irony is, in my profession, my job, I build slides for my job all the time. So somehow I just didn't make it work this time, but it is what it is. So yeah. And then the last thing that I want to share with you guys before I hop off of here, because I do have to go run some errands today, is I am going to be posting more content on social media. So if you're into social media, you can follow me, and I will get my social media content back up here. There it is. So you can follow me on social media at these handles, specifically on Twitter and Instagram. One of those, the Twitter account from a while ago when I used to go by Big Chris Photography, but the Instagram account that I have for Free Will Photos, I'm going to be posting on there quite regularly, especially as I'm going to be using a lot of the mobile application. I do have some series that are coming up, which we'll talk about reinvigorating some or reigniting some old photos, which if you're on the ON1 Plus membership, you may have seen that. that there was a photographer who kind of did that, but it's going to be my spin on the same kind of concept. So, yeah, I will pause here for any questions that any of you may have. And I always love the conversation. But if there are no questions, then I am going to go ahead and sign off. So, like I always tell you guys, and I truly do mean it, until the next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.